Good morning and welcome to another episode of New Day Saturday edition. We're back to do what we do best, which is to deliberate over issues of national interest. My name is Abna Tebi and we are on New Day Saturday edition. You're very welcome to the show. We're live on TV3 here in Accra. We're also live on 3FM 92.7. We're also live on Connect 97.1 FM in Takoradi in the Western region. And we're connecting globally with our audience on 3news.com. So indeed, it's been a very active week. Lots of activities going on as the campaign trail picks up with activity. It's just about 3 months and we don't expect anything less. So lots of activity to report and to talk about during the week. A number of things we'll be looking at today. We're looking at one, the commencement of oil production at the 10 oil fields. The president turned the valve there and earlier on in the week. And we'll also look at the ECG and whether or not to privatize. Again, the debate has reared its head. We'll be looking at issues coming up from that. Also, we'll be looking at the NDC campaign launch on Sunday in Cape Coast and matters arising. And then we'll touch on vote buying and some survey report which has come out to show that a number of political parties are engaging in that. So quickly, as usual, excuse me, let me give some context to the topics outlined. So Ghana, after a long period of wait and hope, finally discovered oil in commercial quantities in 2007 by Cosmos Energy, and it was developed by Tullow Oil. The oil field was christened Jubilee Offshore Oil Field, and it has a total proven reserves of about 3 billion barrels. Now, the Jubilee field was initially estimated to produce about 150,000 barrels of crude oil per day. However, upon commencement of production, the field was producing 100,000 per day. In May 2016, there were some reports that Tullow Oil had slashed the daily production of oil by over 50%, producing 33,000 barrels per day. So from the anticipated 150,000 barrels per day, we are now doing 33,000 barrels per day. Now, 9 years down the lane, another oil field has been commissioned for production of oil in commercial quantities, and we're talking about the 10 oil fields named after 3 oil fields in the Western region. Now, the president this week commissioned this project, and this project is deemed to have a production capacity of between 20,000 and 23,000 barrels of oil per day. Now, given the decline we experienced in production with regards to the Jubilee fields, from 100,000 to the current 33,000. We are asking, is there any cause for us to be worried about the sustained production of oil at optimal levels with the 10 fields? How do we ensure that we have optimal production from these fields with corresponding optimal benefits to the nation and the entire citizenry? And then also, to what extent will the recently passed Petroleum Exploration and Production Act assist with our objectives of making the best use of our oil find? The panel will be looking at these issues and more in detail when we come back. And then when we turn our attention to the fate of ECGS, the debate still rages on to privatize or not to privatize. Well, government says it is seeking to bring some private sector participation to take over some aspects of operations of the ECG. Now, ASAP this week, that's the Africa Center for Energy Policy, released a report which is said to be findings of a survey conducted on the issue of the privatization of the ECG. Now, one findings that came out strongly was that about more than 80% of Ghanaians want the Electricity Corporation of Ghana, or Company of Ghana, sorry, to be privatized. Now, Ghanaians attributed this to their desire for ECG to provide them with reliable power supply, of course, affordable power, and a proactive power policy as well. Now, already there has been some vehement opposition to this, and a group calling itself the Coalition Against the Proposed Concession Arrangement for Electricity Company of Ghana has issued a press statement stating its position against it categorically. Now, to privatize or not to privatize, that's the big question. Again, the panel will be weighing in on all issues surrounding this discussion. Then when we turn our attention to vote buying, yes, the campaign trail is ablaze. As I said earlier, political season is here, about 3 months to election, so lots of activity. Now, the CDD Ghana has waded into the discussion about vote buying, and there's a pre-election survey report which suggests that more than vote buying ahead of the 2016 presidential and parliamentary elections shows that about 51% of the respondents said that the ruling NDC party had been offering gifts in exchange for their votes. Well, the NPP also came in with 32% next in line. We'll be looking at the vote buying in general, but also narrow it down to events of the week involving some activities in the Western region. And then lastly, we'll turn our attention to the NDC campaign launch, which was done in Cape Coast last Sunday, and issues coming out from there. This is NewDay Saturday edition, live on TV3, also live on 3FM, and also live on Connect FM. We're also streaming live on the internet at 3news.com. So let me bring in the panel now. We have here Mr. Mike Okwe Jr. He is the Deputy Communications Director of the New Patriotic Party, NPP. We also have Mr. Kwame Jantwa. He's a Vice Chairperson of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, also a Commissioner of the NDPC and a Technical Advisor to the Civil Society Platform on Oil and Gas. And next to him, we have Mr. Kofi Adams, National Organizer of the ruling National Democratic Congress, NDC. Good morning to you, gentlemen, and welcome. It's good to have you here.
Good morning to you.
Great. So we'll be starting off with the issue about vote buying, as it's one of the main things making the headlines during the week. So amidst everything that's happening on the political campaign trail, we have this report launched by the CDD also coming in to add to the conversation that, and it's actually naming the political parties. NDC comes in tops with 51% of respondents who were interviewed saying that, yes, the party has been offering gifts in exchange for their votes. Also coming in is the NPP with 32%. Now, I will start with you, Mr. Kofi Adams. Generally, vote buying, what do we make of it? Would we ever have a time where we don't have that?
Let me start by greeting your viewers this morning. And let me also indicate that I am discussing this subject not based on the CDD's survey. Because if it is just based on the CDD survey, then I will decline comment on it. But I'm discussing it as a subject that is of importance to us.
Yes. So this one was added to the mix, not that is a name.
Personally have had my issues and problems with CDD's reports, and as a political party, we have had issues with CDD.
Very well.
But the issue of vote buying keeps coming up, not just from the CDD's angle, but a subject that has been of concern to many persons. So we can discuss it.
Sure.
There have been concerns that do you buy what is not available? It is only when somebody is selling something that another person can buy. So are there vote sellers? That should be another question that we should ask ourselves. If there are vote sellers, then most probably there will be vote buyers. But as a political party, we design programs to reach out to people as a party. Per the designs of our programs, you may assemble party persons or send them assignment or expect a certain representation to be present when you engage them. Because these are party workers and party persons who will be engaged in all kinds of activity, you budget for such an activity. You may have to transport them. You may sometimes have to clothe them. In some instances, people actually buy this paraphernalia. Because when you attend party rallies and party programs, you will see people who sell these party wares. When you come to a party head office, as I speak now, even today, Saturday, you will see people who are selling party wares there when it gets to periods such as this. So you have some persons who will get those party paraphernalia for free. And of course, some of them, you may get them telling you that, oh, I haven't gotten anything from the party, no party insignia with me, so give me something. I've been voting. You hear such things. So to the mind of that person, the person may be thinking that, oh, that party paraphernalia that is giving him or her is inducing him or her to vote in a certain line. If that is what they are talking, I think that they are absolutely also wrong. We have had a cultural thing long before even we started voting. where when you visited even your elders, you are expected to go with a gift. Sometimes when you are leaving, you are expected to drop something. As we were discussing earlier, Abina, it's more like a cultural thing. You go to the chief's palace. It is not because the chief cannot feed himself or the queen mother cannot feed herself, but then you are expected as a cultural thing to drop something in an envelope that is not mentioned most of the time, and then some drinks for as a token of respect and recognition that you have visited that person. Would anybody classify that as vote buying? I have my own doubt. So if you do some kind of survey and you situate it in the Western world system, you may be getting it completely wrong. You would have to look at what pertains culturally. I have heard others even move on to talk about government announced projects as means of buying vote. For example, President Kufuor, before he exited in his second term, introduced a project called LEAP, Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty. That households are identified and given some money at the end of the month. Sometimes it is paid every quarter. This project was seen to be good and was continued under President Mills and has been continued under President Mahama and further enhanced and expanded to cover many other regions that were not covered in the past, according to the poverty index. Somebody sitting somewhere will say that this support to the poor in society, to be able to bring them up so they can also have their heads above water, is vote buying. I disagree. This is a policy to intervene to affect some positively. There is also a government announced policy that was stated clearly even in the budget statement that was read before Parliament and approved by the august house of this country, that fishing communities will continue to get support in the area of premix and outboard motors and other fishing implements that will be subsidized by government. And so if government continue to perform government business and support these persons for something that is not hidden, something that is supported by the budget, something that is so clearly approved, I cannot accept this as vote buying. If you support the cocoa farmer with a program and project that is announced with fertilizer, that fertilizer be given to cocoa farmers for free, chemicals be given them for free, seedlings be given them for free as a government project, you cannot consider this as vote buying. That is where I disagree with all those who say that doing such things, that is a program of government to affect those who need to be affected positively, considered as vote buying.
Great. I mean, listening to you, I get different issues coming up. You've raised issues about culture, you've raised issues about government plan policies and all of that, yes. But I'm getting from your submissions then that it has to do with the timing of certain activities, because yes, you talk about LEAP, you talk about the budgeted outboard motors and all of that, but if observers who are sitting back looking from afar are watching how government is doing things and are able to detect that, well, perhaps all throughout the years nothing happened, just about 3 months to elections we see government doling out cash, doling out certain gifts and all, then the issue may arise.
Abena, that is also wrong, because fishing communities have always had support from government every year. That support will come at the time it is needed. You cannot go supporting fishermen when they are not fishing.
So they only need it at certain times, which is closer to elections.
Certain times. You can only support them when fishing time is due. And that is why when you go to the coastal area, this is the time they do their what? Festival, because this is the time they have the bumper harvest. The support of outboard motors, for example, the fishing nets, the pound for fishmongers and the rest, did not start just this month or last month. It's been going on.
And so if we take a look back at all the years,
you can roll back at all the years, you will see, and even many months from Tema through Gamashi area here and many other communities, they have had such support.
Very
so
well. Let
it
me
is
bring in
a
Mr.
project that has been happening all
Very
through.
well. Let me bring in Mr. Jantua. Mr. Jantua, please. Vote buying. Perhaps, what is your definition of that? Because Mr. Kofi Adams has raised issues about certain activities that are already budgeted for. Government is going out doing that, and perhaps people are putting or tagging it as activities intended to lure voters or to lure votes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to our viewers. In terms of what Kofi indicated with regards to the commission of projects and all those type of activities, is that also vote buying? If in a district before elections, say somewhere around, we are in 2016, this government came into power 2012, so let's say 2014, the government commissions a project that would benefit the society, and come elections, the people in that area decide to vote for the government. Can that be termed as vote buying? Now, for this particular topic, there's something in law called offer and acceptance, isn't there? Mm-hmm. So, you offer it, and the person who's supposed to accept it, if they want to accept it, they accept it. So, it's a two-way thing. Now, if you look at the survey also indicated that it is not only the politicians offering, but the people are also prepared to sell their votes. So
Mr. Adams was raising the issue about, do we have vote sellers? Apparently, from what you're saying, we do.
According to what that some people are prepared to sell their votes. And if they are prepared to sell their votes and somebody's prepared to buy, I'm not saying it's a good thing, don't get me wrong. But if the perception and the mindset of the people is that it's our cocoa season, we're going to make some money out of it, why not? We don't care what the government comes to do afterwards, or whatever government comes into power comes to do afterwards. We don't care about that. We are prepared to sell our votes to also feel comfortable for a short duration of time. You see, Abner, for me, all this boils down to having a strong economy. It all boils down to that. People would go out and buy certain things and prepare to sell certain things because of their current situation, that they are not able to live to their own satisfaction. And it's relative. Satisfaction in terms of how people live is a relative thing. To me, my satisfaction would be to have 2-3 cars and be able to live the way I want to live. To somebody, even if I have a bicycle or a motorbike, it's fair for me. Okay. So that is relative. But people want to feel comfortable in their own surroundings. And if they find they don't feel comfortable, and this is a time where politicians would offer and they would take, yes.
But that's just for a fleeting moment.
It's for a fleeting moment, which makes it worse for us. Because then it goes to show that people really do not understand the exercise of voting a political party into power. Because if you understood it, then you won't be prepared to sell your vote. Now, the other side of it is that, yes, some people will sell their votes, but they will do what is right in terms of getting into the ballot box and voting what their conscience tells them to vote. On that score, I don't think political parties, if they are doing it, should be doing it. I mean, any government that comes into power should make sure that they do what they say they will do, so that it stops anybody from thinking that it's our cocoa season and that we should also make some money out of it. It's not a money-making thing. It's a governance thing, and it is building a nation thing. Now, the other thing I'd like to ask is that with this CDD report, what was the sample size? 2,400 over, I think, 16 districts. Is that a realistic sample size to be able to come to these conclusions? Is it realistic? I think the media has a lot to do with this. I would wish that the media across this country would try and take ordinary Ghanaians, bring them into the studio, and ask them specifically, this report is saying this. What do you think? Is this something that happens? Is this something that you expect to happen? Do you find that?
But Mr. Johnson, even with the media, wouldn't we still have the issue about methodology? I mean, how you're talking about random people? How random could they be to represent a bigger the nation?
You have correspondents throughout the country. Even if you don't bring them into the studio, those correspondents can go around the country and do those interviews. You'd have a better sample of people, and you'd have people in the rural areas who will be able to tell us samples of what has happened. Right now, we're hearing that the president's wife has donated this. We're hearing the president's wife donated that. The president donated that. Are you saying that other parties don't donate? Is that what we're saying?
I think with when the incumbent is doing it, issues about conflict of interest are coming in. You're looking at public funds and how questions as to where these donations are being funded from, the sources of funding and all of that. So really, between the government and any other person who could also do that, those are the salient questions that come up.
It is wrong. It is wrong for any government, any political party in opposition to hand out gifts or money to anyone for votes. It is wrong. It is something that is wrong. And so institutions like CDD and the like should not only wait till election time to bring this out. Throughout the year.
Maybe perhaps this is where they're able to show it, because this is where things happen.
Yes, that is true. But have they also, they know that this is happening. It didn't start today. Have they also had the chance to go out and educate people throughout the duration of a particular parliament that, look, we know this happens. This is the reason why it shouldn't happen. And educate people so that come election time, when they now go out and do the survey, they themselves will realize that at least it has come down.
Very well.
Now, there's also a question of perception.
Briefly, and then I move to...
Yes, there's also a question of perception. And the perception is that when people see certain things happening in terms of opposition parties and the parties in power doing certain things, the wider group will perceive that they are buying votes. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It happens. It's been part and parcel of the fabric of our political system for a very long time. But it doesn't look as if the people and the governments and the parties that we have want to stop it. As we were discussing earlier, it's a cultural thing. Now, if it's a cultural thing, how do we stop it? Because it flies in the face of the kind of democracy
and the development
that we want to get.
Very well. Let me move on to Mr. Okwe here. Vote buying. Do you buy into this whole argument that it's a cultural thing, and so it's pretty much engraved in our politics, body politics, so much so that it's pretty much nothing we can do about it?
Yes, let me start by saying a very good morning to yourself, my two fellow panelists and brothers as well, and to your kind viewers. This issue of vote buying is something that has two facets. You can look at it academically, or you can look at the reality on the ground as to what is happening. So let us just look at it in terms of the recent monitoring abuse of incumbency report that was released by the Ghana Integrity Initiative. That was for 2012. And this is an emphatic statement. They said, one major form of electoral fraud is abuse of incumbency. All this thing that we are talking about, vote buying, for me, it is more the issue of abuse of incumbency. Then it goes on further to say, abuse of incumbency refers to the use of state resources to aid an incumbent campaign for re-election. Now, this occurs when an incumbent party or candidate takes advantage of government power and or resources which are not available to the incumbent's challengers or opponents, or even deprives the challengers from using those resources. Abuse of incumbency prevents fair elections by putting government resources that should be equally accessible to all candidates behind the incumbent. This poses, and this is the important part, a serious threat to sustaining democracy. So this is something that we need to look at with all the seriousness it deserves, because this is not just a matter of putting money into people's pockets. It is a matter of a certain abuse. Rightly said by fellow panelists that we have a culture of gifts. But the source of the gift is also very important. Because I can come to your house tomorrow and say, I enjoyed the way you hosted the program, and give you a goat. Because you are not an adjudicator in anything I'm doing, for example, because you are not involved in any decision-making process, and that is the issue, decision-making process, in this case, voting, so on and so forth, there's no problem. But where, for example, you are the electoral commissioner, I am a political representative, and I come and give you a goat because of the motive that could be, and we all know that corruption is not necessarily what it is, but the perception thereof.
And indeed, in politics, we're told that perception is as good as the reality.
Yes, and I want us to even take it out of just politics. Corruption, that's why there's perception index for corruption, you know. So when it comes to that, it can become a big problem. Now, when people are even talking about abuse of incumbency and vote buying, it doesn't just relate to the good examples that I've been giving on the other side of the table. It can even go to state resources like even airtime. The kind of coverage you give the president on GBC in itself can be vote buying, because one, you are allowing him to, under the guise of governance, campaign. You are allowing him, under the guise of governance, to give gifts. Gifts that are given in the context of not that, well, as a government, we think we've made this policy, it's your turn to receive these gifts, so we brought it, may God bless you, and you go. You finish and say, may God bless you, and don't forget to vote for me come 2016. Then all of a sudden, that issue of giving a gift, what is acceptable, the context under which the gift has been given has changed the whole purpose or the motive thereof. And once you do that, then it is vote buying. So I always give this example. A friend can tell you you are a fool, but they are saying it in the context of you are funny, so you won't be offended. But by the same context, somebody who may not be your friend, or somebody who's your friend but in anger tells you you're a fool, is telling you you're being stupid. And you won't tolerate somebody telling you stupid, but you tolerate funny. So the same gift, the context under which you receive the gift, the motive for which it is given, will then determine the crime. And that's why most crime refers or needs mensria. It needs the mental faculty to determine how this is looked at in its entirety. So if, as a politician, I have asked people to come and visit me, and when they come, I give them a message of campaign. Okay, I'm standing as a parliamentary candidate or whatever, and I give them what is reasonably enough money transport, then that is a totally different issue. But where, for example, you go around to a function where the people are already, and then you go, and where you are leaving, you have 50 Ghana cedis in matches box, throwing it into the crowd and telling them, I don't want to use certain terms because then it will be associated to just one political party, but you are creating a euphoria of more is going to come if you do this for me. Then you are creating not only a certain deception, but what my brother referred to, one of my brothers here referred to as, you are preparing the electorate's mind that, oh, more will come in terms of take this and do this.
But which is the situation we have currently on our hands.
Yes, so we should make sure that we don't look at just the issue of gifts as vote buying, because the context is very, very important. Now, if you are, for example, in opposition, you have raised money, and you go to, for example, a purpose, you see Kaya Ye, you go and give them headbands. You go to mothers, you give them matches, you go here. That is totally different from you go and give pants to groups of people who, first of all...
What's the difference?
The difference is that, first of all, you go there, you have the party's logo there, you go there with pomp and ceremony of the government, then you make it look as if...
You are looking at this activity coming from the side of the incumbent government.
And that is where there's a problem, because if you look at it, that's why I say
otherwise,
that...
if it's any other, there's no problem. Because that was what Mr. Janto was trying to...
Wait, there's gift and there's abuse of incumbency. Abuse of the incumbency, for example, when it came to the issue of outboard motors, the representative of the NDC, I want to give a specific example, who was on Joy FM at the time, called, I think, Madam Joyce Mutgari or so. She said, this is government money, government initiative. So we know it is government money. Okay? Now, when you go there, are you giving it in your capacity as government or in the capacity of re-election? That is where the problem is. So when the president goes on such a thing, for example, we don't want to see his campaign team on there. We don't want to see Kofi Adams as part of the people giving them thing, because then now it is a party issue. And I remember very well that
when we're wrapping up.
Yes, this is where the difference is. We have to create the dichotomy. If he wants to go there as a party event, he must go with his party people. If he wants to give gifts, you go with the Minister of Fisheries, you go with the Central Regional Minister, and you give the fishermen fishing outboard motor. There's no problem.
Great. Mr. Janto, Mr. Kofi Adams, I'll come to you, but I just want Mr. Janto to... Can there be that dichotomy? Can we distinguish between the two?
There's a very fine line.
Yes.
Extremely fine line.
But once there's a line, we could work with that.
Well, we can work with
yes.
it. But if you permit me to also look at a report from the CDD, if you permit me. It says, the Center of Democratic Development has stated in a study conducted that 84% of Ghanaian voters are influenced in their decision on choices during election based on how they can directly benefit from some of particular candidates. According to the CDD study concerned in some 10 constituencies with high incidence of poverty, which included the Akan constituency in the Volta region, Busum Freho in the Ashanti region, and Odododio in the Greater in the Greater Accra region, Ghanaian electorates are not necessarily concerned about a candidate's program towards their welfare.
They just want the tangibles.
Just want the tangibles. What can I get from it? And it is a mindset that politicians have to work on. Not only the incumbent party, but all politicians. In situations like this is very detrimental to our democracy and our governance. And it behoves on every political party within a 4-year span of a government that they come together and stop it. Make sure it stops. You see, the challenge I have with politics in this country is that the incumbent government does not share anything with any of the opposition parties. When you go to Britain today, House of Parliament, before the incumbent government comes out with anything, they copy and get the views of the opposition before they bring it on board. Do we do that in this country? No, because it looks as if it's a war. So you ask the question, this winner takes all democracy we have, governance we have, is it helping us? We've practiced it since 1992 till today. We are still talking about the same problems anytime election comes up. We need to sit back and ask ourselves, is it something that we need to do? For me, for me, really and truly, it's my personal view, I don't think this system of governance is helping us.
Very well.
One reason I say that is that when the incumbent president comes and he makes a statement, you find a lot of aides around him. You find a lot of party people around him talking for him. He used his mouth, he used his tongue, he used his voice to say what he said. But then you get
Different
commentators,
interpretations.
different interpretations.
Very well.
So I feel it is time we look at probably going back to the parliamentary system, where you get the prime minister coming into parliament and questions directly put to him about some comments he's made. It is something we should think about, because really, it's not where we are today. Is not helping our democracy.
Very well, which raises issues again about our Constitutional Review Commission work and all of that, which I mean continuously keeps reigning up
because
on this platform.
Abna, we've gone through this cycle so many times.
Yes, Mr. Kofi Adams, I asked the question: could we separate the two? An incumbent government with the sitting president being the flag bearer of the party, could we distinguish between party activities and in terms of donations and all of that with government projects that are being commissioned? Because clearly it's a blurred line.
Abina, why do we vote for a president?
I think there are so many reasons.
We vote for a president because you want him to deal with the issues that confront you.
Ideally, that is a reason. That whether that is true is another thing.
A president will have to introduce policies and programs that works to positively affect the lives of the people. That is why, for example, when President Mahama was voted into office, he saw needs to deal with education. So today on the streets of Accra, you do not have children who work during morning and say they are in the afternoon shift.
That's not true.
Oh, please, you do not have it happening unless otherwise they may be go around and see water. People used to walk around with gallons looking for water. Today, you do not have that phenomenon. Indeed, in communities that did not have water for many, many years, for the first time,
maybe an exchange of that is what we are seeing now with the
I'm
Dumsor
telling
situation.
you, do you still experience any Dumsor today? Are you still experiencing any Dumsor today? Do you still sleep in darkness? If you do so, then it is because either you've run out of credit or your transformer in that area developed fault. Indeed, as we speak currently, we actually have surplus of energy. But then let me ask some simple questions. An opposition leader stands on a platform and promises heaven. Indeed, there's a joke that is making the round that when President Mahama went to commission the 10 fields, somebody heard it and said he promised 11 fields. And that when President Mahama commissioned the first Hajj flight in Tamale yesterday, somebody said he would bring Kaaba to Tamale for people to perform Hajj there. The opposition leader or the opposition persons have a right to go and stand and make all the promises they can make on this earth. And they feel that the incumbent president who is implementing the programs should not link the programs that he is implementing to his re-election. Does it make sense to you? You go stand there and promise that you will build road, you will see to the welfare of fishermen, and I am doing a program that affects the welfare of the fishermen already, and you say I should not link that program and project I am doing to my re-election bid, then that incumbent president will necessarily not be worth being a political leader, not worth being a candidate, because that is what you must do. The questions you must ask first and foremost is, one, is the policy positive? Is supporting those in the fishing community because of the business they do positive? Is it a good thing to do? Yes, it's a good thing to do. Does it impact in the lives of those who benefit from that policy? Yes, it does. Are those who have not benefited
Mr. Adams, sorry to cut in there, but if that's the case, shouldn't
we vote, Abena, how do we vote in this country? Does anybody stand on you when you are voting in the booth? Does anybody stand on you? Our vote remains our rights, our votes remain secret unless we so decide to let the public know how we voted. So look at the policy. Is the policy impacting on your life positively? Is the water problem that you used to confront in the past off? Is the difficulties you go through as a fisherman in getting your outboard motors through a government policy, has it been reduced? As a fishmonger, the difficulties that you go through, has it been reduced? If you are one who has not benefited from that policy now, do you wish to benefit? Do you wish for that policy to continue? If it is yes, then the answer is vote for the one who is implementing that policy. I do not see that as vote buying at all. If a cocoa farmer has to go and buy his seedlings and that costs him more money, and government introduce a policy that, look, we are benefiting so much from cocoa, so we want to raise 60 million cocoa seedlings and give to the farmer for free, because we will ultimately benefit from this cocoa. We want to give the fertilizer, which otherwise used to be subsidized, to the farmer for free. Is that going to help the farmer? Yes, it will help the farmer. Will it help the country? Yes, it will help the country. Will other farmers want to benefit? Yes, they want to benefit. So what will you do in order to benefit is to vote for that policy. And who implements that policy is the person you go
Very
for.
well. But
so for me...
Let's look at a particular example now, which is what happened recently in the Western region with the outboard motors.
Yeah.
Clearly, from your submission earlier, it was a budgeted activity.
It's a budgeted activity.
Done at a certain time,
Done
which
at
is
a
a
certain
campaign
time.
period. And
Of
which has
course,
brought about
it-
this confusion within even the
what I'm
party,
saying
whether
is
or
that-
not it's actually coming from the state funds or from the party is an issue.
There was no confusion in the party. There was absolutely no
So
confusion.
how come we have the two?
There was no confusion in the party as far as the funding for that project is concerned.
But what we are hearing out there-
The confusion is in the minds of Linda Kwafo, the GII lady. The confusion is rather her mind. She is the one who is saying that is kind of bribing or buying vote. Because the confusion is rather in her mind. When the president launched that project, he made it very clear that government was taking care of 40% of the cost.
I get that, but Mr.
You mentioned,
Those are the facts.
Listen, you mentioned the deputy transport minister and spokesperson of our campaign, saying clearly that this is a government policy, a government program that has been announced. You have not been able to.
So in other words, there's no
any other
controversy.
person.
You are saying there's no controversy
from
about
our
it.
side.
Mr. Jantua.
The controversy. Listen,
Just a minute.
No, you
Yes.
asked me a question. Let me answer
Very well.
before Mr. Jantua comes. The controversy
I'll come to you, Mr.
settles in the minds of those who see it as vote buying, as bribery, because this is a policy that has been well documented, well announced, and it's been going on. This is not the first
Very
time.
well. Let me bring in, yes.
Indeed.
Why? I mean,
Indeed.
Mr. Adams,
For the
yes.
distribution to
Briefly
be
land
effective,
and then-
it is done through, because if people are not aware and I have the information, it is a responsibility to give me much more time to be able to inform
No,
rather
you
than
also have to
to
say, yes.
continue
But
to
thank
deceive
you.
the public.
I think you've made your
to
point,
continue
yes.
to deceive the
No,
public. It's very
Mr. Okwe,
Thank
yes.
you very much. I take exception to programs where we start. First of all, we started with CTD. Then now that they have problems with CTD, and now he has a problem with Ghana Integrity Initiative. That's NDC, stock in trade. They have a problem with everybody. They have a problem with IEA. They have a problem.
Mr. Adams, please.
You
You mentioned you have a problem with
Just a minute,
CDD.
please.
Otherwise, you're not
Mr.
commented.
Adams.
Did you not say that?
Please,
Yes.
please.
Oh,
I
what?
must sit here.
You want us to repair-
Mr. Okwe, just a minute.
You said
Just a minute. Let me
where
hear
is
him
the
out.
confusion? That there's confusion in government, and I said there is no
In the
confusion.
party.
There's
And
confusion
that
in
the
the minds
confusion
of-
is in the mind of the
the
person who
GII.
said the thing was for
You
vote buying.
mentioned the name,
It was
the
a gift,
GII
and I mentioned the
head.
name, and she was the one who insulted.
that's
very well.
And
That's-
in what you gave us, you quoted
You
her.
are being too.
That
In
is
what you
fine.
give, you
Very
quoted
well.
her.
Yes.
Let's
But he's
debate this
addressing
now.
the issue about.
So
you
he
talked about
shouldn't
and then
CDD.
also-
for me saying that I have a problem
No,
with
no, no.
GII.
Wait,
Mr. Just a minute.
but
Mr.
wait.
Okwe,
She
please carry
spoke
on.
in the name of GII. So when you say there's confusion in
so,
her mind,
of course
you
there's
are-
confusion in
you
her
are
mind.
saying,
Very well. Mr. Adams,
thank
that's
you.
fine.
So
You
that's
made
your
your
opinion.
points.
I'm giving
Carry
my
on,
opinion
yes.
now. My opinion is that you are fond of attacking people too much.
When
we started
when
this
they-
Mr.
program,
Adams,
when they
please
decide to
allow
lie,
him to-
is that an
Oh,
attack?
so now you're calling
When
her a
she
liar.
put out a
Mr.
falsehood.
Adams,
Now you're calling
When
her
she
a
put
liar.
out a falsehood.
She didn't put out
No,
a
no, no.
She
falsehood.
lied.
Mr. Adams,
Ah,
no,
she
no, no.
lied.
Kofi,
You've
hold
made
on,
your
hold on,
point.
hold on.
Let
Linda
him-
Kwafo
no, no.
lied.
You've made your
Oh,
point.
Kofi,
She
I will
lied.
talk.
Mr.
She must
Adams.
be called in the face
No.
and told in the face that
She's
she
not
lied.
here.
She's
Relax.
not here to respond.
It
and I
doesn't
won't
matter.
allow that.
Were we there to respond when she
She's
lied?
not here to respond.
Were we there to respond when she lied?
You're watching, listening to NewDay Saturday edition. The conversations are ongoing. Just before the break, we're looking at the vote buying issue. Mr. Okoye was to make his submissions, but I'll take quickly some messages that have come in, and then Mr. Okoye, you make your submissions. This one said, hi, using state resources to give out items to people on political platforms is vote buying, and it's wrong. Example, the outboard motors presented by the president in the Western region. This is Michael in Amasamai. This one says, good morning, Abna. The NPP should be bold and tell Ghanaians what they will do and stop this mischief. As for Nanado, President Kufuor left him with 6 regions and he's now holding on to 1.5. Ghanaians are discerning now. We're going to vote based on issues and not personality. This is Markston in Ashaiman. Otumfor, convener of NDC Crossfire Ghana, is saying, so the CDD has nothing to say aside saying the NDC buys votes. Where are they being sold? So to be bought. The people up north are happy with the Tamale airport that has been done. Is that vote buying? CDD receiving and giving bribe is an offense. So tell us where it's going on so we arrest them. Last one, Senabla, good morning to you and your panelists. Can you help me with the exact meaning of vote buying? Is the actions of the political parties forcing anyone to vote one way or the other? I believe the voter population knows their left from right. This is Aram in Adenta news site. Yes, Ms. Okoye, can you make your submission?
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, the issue of vote buying, which I try to deal with in a realistic and academic context. Madam, look at this picture of the president, okay? In a red polo shirt with NDC emblem, okay? And then he's distributing government outboard motors. Let us not try to make this thing an issue of emotions. Let's look at the reality. President Mahama can distribute outboard motors that belong to the state, but not in NDC colors. He can't understand that. I mean, why do we try to make everything as if this is a problem and that is a problem and so on and so forth? Your own campaign spokesperson, Joyce Mukhtari, has told us, confirmed here today in this studio, that it is a government initiative, right? So why party colors? This is where it becomes vote buying. So if you want to wear party colors and put party colors stickers on things, give it to them by all means at a party event as part of your campaign platform. But don't use state resources to go and do that, and then you wear party colors, letting the people feel like it's a party event. And if you see some of the people in there, they are wearing party scarf. The people there who are receiving the gifts, they are supposed to be ordinary Ghanaians who are not with party paraphernalia. They are fishermen.
But can we determine who it's given to, or what they
what
wear
I'm
when
saying
they come
is
there?
that
The people.
No. Ghanaians must come there as fishermen. They come and take as fishermen from the government. The government must go there as President John Mahama. He has very lovely tops that he wears. You know, those senator things without any party color. He can wear one maybe with a bit of red and black, but definitely not all the NDC colors. But if you go there and you see, I want us to look at this thing, because as Mr. Jantua said, it's a thin line, you know, even love and hate. There's a thin line between love and hate. But we all know what is hate and we all know what is love. The same way, there's a thin line between abuse of incumbency, i.e. vote buying, and government projects. And all we are saying is, for example, one criteria is that once you are using state funds, don't attend the event in party colors. Look, this issue of vote buying, one thing I was happy about with regard to the survey is that the survey says that most Ghanaians say that they will still take the gifts but vote with their conscience, which again was raised here. So as for them, gift or no gift, they made up their mind who to vote against. That in itself, should warn those who want to abuse gift giving that is not going to change Ghanaians' minds to vote for you just because you have taken Ghana money to buy Ghana property and present it in a party fashion, they will take it because they are entitled to it. Yes, the government is doing whether 10, 90, 40, 60. That 10% is from Ghana. So it must be given to Ghanaians as such. I don't like that issue where my brother was saying that he doesn't have a problem with GII. Okay, let us look at it in terms of the Madam Linda, who is a representative of GII, but he is saying the Madam herself is the issue. When we started the program, he said if it were not because of a certain way, he didn't want to talk about CDD because they have a problem with CDD. They have a problem with IEA. They have a problem with Presbyterian Church. They have a problem with any Ghanaian who wants to tell them that this is the reality. Look, the vote buying issue, it is serious. And as my brother was saying, we need NCCE to go around before, and in fact, I agree again that way before elections, to advise Ghanaians that vote buying should not be the reason why they decide to vote for Mr. A or B. It helps a lot. Another thing, of course, is poverty. Because you see, maybe you, madam, if somebody wants to buy you, they may not do it with 100 Ghana. Maybe your own is 10,000. You understand? Mm-hmm. But it looks as if it depends. Some people, you hear they go and give chiefs Land Cruisers. I want to ask, okay, if you give the chief the Land Cruiser, what is it for? Is it for the community? Or the government is allowed to give only the chief a Land Cruiser? What is the purpose of that gift? Is it to influence him to tell his people that go a certain way? And if that is the case, is it right? It doesn't matter whether it's NDC or NPP or CPP doing it. It is wrong. So this issue of abuse of incumbency, I agree that, to be honest, our system too is part of it. You know, abroad, if you are doing a campaign and you have a t-shirt for NPP or NDC, the party supporters buy it. There's nobody who gets the t-shirt free because it is seen as a means of raising money. So we had Dr. Pakwesi Ndiom come from America with lovely idea to come and try that in Ghana. Okay, Pakwesi Ndiom, what they ask, what is wrong with Pakwesi Ndiom? They think that we are coming to buy t-shirt. He should give it to us for free or he should forget it. Nobody was wearing a t-shirt. So Dr. Pakwesi Ndiom had to revert to type and give us the freebies that we not only crave, but we demand as well as the electorate. So I believe that there's a two-way street. And my brother was right, that's Kofi, on the issue of if there are also people there who are ready to sell their votes in the typical way, then no wonder somebody is ready to buy. Because if there's no market, then who will buy it? So I want us to look at this issue of vote buying, abuse of incumbency in a simple context. If they bring the money, I mean, I like teasing, as he gave some references of what other people said. I like teasing my NDC brothers. I say, as for the money, the board motor money is taxpayers' money. So if they bring you anything which you think is taxpayers' money, collect the money and chop. After all, it's all Ghana money. Then when you finish, you also vote according to your conscience. If you don't like NDC, don't let that thing that they've come to give you, which is not their money, it is our money. Want our money? They will take it, give it to us, and then they say, after I've given you your money, vote for me.
Very
no,
well.
If you want me to vote for you,
we need to be wrapping up on this, so we move on to the next.
Money.
So thank you very much, Mr. Okwe. Briefly, Mr. Johnson, then we move on.
A quick point.
Yes.
Do not let us lose sight of the fact that vote buying happens.
Yes, it does.
Shouldn't lose sight of that fact that vote buying happens. In terms of the timing at which an incumbent would go do something is also critical and key. However, let's condemn it. Let's condemn it that it's happening. Look, the people expect it. The politicians feed into that expectation. Let's put aside elections and just look at our own party elections. Come Congress, come electing of our executives. It's the people who would ask, na oba wan fa hwe ama na ye benye bibie frame dey na benye frame. It is something that is there. And so as I conclude, political parties, CDD, all these institutions that are responsible for educating Ghanaians with regards to certain things that we do, we should get up and do it. If we started this thing in 92, by now we'd have been somewhere.
Very well. Let me take some messages and then we carry on to the next topic. This one's saying, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. If Nanado and his wife can arbitrarily distribute headphones and others to induce electorates to vote for them, why can't President Mohammed and his wife do same? In 2008, NPP induced people with 20 Ghana cedis plus t-shirts to come to the rally at Accra Academy. This is it says NPP should give us a pause. John and Saman Mensa in Ablekuma. Another one said, Abna, do you know why NDC is not investing much into Ghana education? Vote buying is one reason. Lack of knowledge, my people perish. I wonder if they can share gifts at all campuses. This is Max. Cassie says the NPP is also sharing goodies. As far as I'm concerned, is that also vote buying? Good morning all. Remember the NDC party started this first under President Rawlings when they were sharing Maggie cubes, rice, fertilizers, etc. in the early years of our political dispensation, and they lost to the NPP party. My issue is about the president's wife who was struggling like any Ghanaian and can now afford billions of cedis distributing goodies in election periods. This is IB. Farouk and Tamale saying, good morning to Abna and to your panel, especially my able comrade Kofi Adams. The survey by CDD is not accurate. What is more vote buying than Nanado's wife going around giving items to people in NPP branded colors? Let us move on and stop this mischief. Last one says, good morning to you all. Ghanaians, please accept this new definition of vote buying from me. Okay, somebody is offering a definition. Vote buying is now robbing Peter to pay Paul. If government cannot grant to schools in the 3 northern region and yet government can get outboard motors free, please ask Mr. President to do what is mandatory. The government of the day can deliberately collapse. I'm not getting this, but this is from Zion and Wa. Thanks for your messages. Please keep them coming. We'll be reading them as we go. So now we're moving on to look at the ECG and matters around the privatization or otherwise.
Government should stop paying salaries, because if it pays salaries to workers also, they will say they are buying.
Very well. Let me just carry on. We're moving on to the ECG now, Mr. Adams. Yes. So the debate is ongoing, is raging, whether or not to privatize. Recently, ASEP has released a report which suggests that more than 80% of Ghanaians want the ECG to be privatized. Ghanaians attributed their desire for the ECG privatization to the need for reliable power supply, affordable power, and a productive power policy. And then there's the other side, which is a vehement opposition coming from a group calling itself the Coalition Against the Proposed Concession Arrangement for Electricity Corporation of Ghana. They've also issued a press statement raising certain issues there that we'll be looking at. So to privatize or not to privatize, that's the discussion. Now, I want us to look at this. I believe that this debate is ongoing, raging on and on. It's been raging on for some time now, but this is it. The ECG, we know, is only a distributor of power. It can only distribute power when it has power to distribute. So whether or not we privatize it, whatever you can call it, whether it's a concession, it's bringing in private sector participation and all. My question is, how does the arrangement of a privatization of sorts, how would that resolve the challenge of power, exactly, regular power supply? Mr. Kofi Adams, and then
Abna, you are right when you say ECG is a distributor of power, but distribution also involves use of equipment. You don't distribute the power in the air. It's not like VRA produces and other independent power producers produce and then pass it through GridCo, and then all you do is just throw it in the air and then people pick it. You will have to use a system to distribute power, and therefore you need to have transformers, you need to build a substation and all these to be able to be sure that power will get to the people that is supposed to get. Indeed, you must meter homes with appropriate meters that would allow you give people the power that they need and also pay for the power that they use. So it is not the case that once the power is available, then ECG can just distribute.
But have you had a situation where power is available but ECG
as
has
we
not been
speak
able
now,
to?
As we speak now, there's surplus. There's surplus of power. But you still will have
what
areas.
ECG to do with the surplus?
What I'm saying is that as we speak now, there's surplus. But there are still areas that will be in darkness. Because either their transformer is faulty or this equipment is not functioning well, and so on and so on. Many other things may not be going right. What government desire and government wanted to do is to get somebody participating who can also inject funds that otherwise is not available to ECG or government to do. And it has worked well in some departments or in some agencies. Yes, in some others, it did not really work too well. People easily remind us of the MPP giving off the Ghana Water Company to Aqua Vitans, which never worked anyway. It ended up worsening the situation, where what we saw was the Kufuor gallons all over, and we did not have water to persons. And it went back to the state, and we have worked on such water supply system that today many homes now can have water.
So if you're referring to the aquavitas issue, why
people have raised that? People have raised that. That is why you learn from the kind of arrangement that was done, and you don't just pass everything onto them without making sure that they are going to be injecting capital into it. And so I am for a participation, private persons participating. But that participation must be bringing in some capital that otherwise is not available. And I kind of agree with ASEP. Like, I may defer to Lawyer Jantua on matters of an energy discussion. I think I can also defer to some extent ASEP against a coalition, because they have had some kind of in-depth analysis and following in what has been happening in our energy system and energy sector. So the only advice I can give at this moment is for us to make sure that the arrangement we are going into is such that we are going to benefit. And I have seen so far what it is that government want, and I see there's a vast departure from the Aqua Vitans run system, where we just handed over the Ghana Water Company to them without any injection. This one demands a certain continuous injection of capital, a certain investment to make sure that ECG is properly retooled and positioned to be able to give power to every home. Currently, Ghana has about 80% power penetration. That's homes that have access to power is about 80%. Second to South Africa in the whole of Africa. Very well. The desire is to cover every part of the country, and you need to reach that. Some areas that are already covered continue to sleep also in darkness, not because there is not power available. Like I said, as we speak now, there is excess of about 110 megawatts that we are looking for, and if the plan of government continue, we are going to even produce much more. Yes, we may be exporting. When it comes to exporting, that will not be the responsibility of what? ECG. I'm also told, per the power purchasing agreements that ECG has signed, they would equally have enough to cover the 100% of the country, even if we want to do so. So, participation of a private person for me is good. My only issue is that we must make sure that there is no repeat of the Aqua Vitans run system. But I'm convinced, what I have read, what I have seen, that we will not have a repeat of Aqua Vitans run system.
Very well. You talk about some technical issues got to do with transformer issues and all of that, making it impossible for ECG to perhaps distribute
be able
power
to do everything.
Exactly. But again, one of the challenges or one of the concerns ECG has raised consistently is that government is hugely indebted to it. Indeed, government is the biggest debtor to, or biggest debtor of ECG, and perhaps
Abna,
with
you are right about
yes.
that.
So let me land. Yes. So perhaps if government were to be paying consistently, ECG would have the necessary funds to do what it needs to do. In other words, for government to be so much indebted to ECG and now turn around and say you're not being able to do your job, let's then privatize so that you can do better, it raises issues of concern.
Abina,
quickly touch on it, and then I move on to it.
You are right to an extent. Which are the government agencies that have resulted in government indebtedness to ECG. There are areas like the health centers, like the colleges, the universities, our schools. And we do not expect all these institutions to all of a sudden start paying full cost recovery. Even in the arrangement with the participation of this private person, there's still going to be a lifeline for this institution. So the burden is not going to be passed on to them directly or onto government. Government has worked out to make sure that some agencies, like the ministries, department and agencies, are all metered with what? Prepaid meters. The bungalows of these appointees are metered with prepaid meters. If you go to our university,
from the postpaid to prepaid has been, I think it was a policy that was
but it's a policy. It's a policy that was not fully implemented, which is now being implemented as we speak now. Almost all ministerial bungalows and residents are on prepaid.
That's a fact.
Yeah, that's a fact. So ministers and appointees pay for the power that they use. Then also going to our universities. Now the lecturers pay for use of power to the university, and the university doesn't pay for that power. So what is being designed now is to make sure that non-academic facility, such as residence of lecturers and the rest, will now be metered, so that just like you, just like me, who go to buy power, they would also go and buy their power. So that doesn't become a burden on the state again. So some of these things will help relieve, but you need further injection of capital to be able to do a number of these things. There's a lot of power theft, and there's a lot of power loss. That investment is what can help deal with such situations, and we need such a partner to be able to deal.
Very well, Mr. Jantua. The argument, yes, that we need an entity that would be able to pump money consistently into ECG to make it work better. But there's the other side, which is also saying, this is the press statement by the coalition, which is opposed to the whole arrangement for private sector participation, talking about the fact that ECG is worth $4 billion and more, and is able to annually pump in so much. So if that's the situation, why are we making a case for an entity that is coming in and going to make relatively less investments annually?
Abner, from the word go, I have been dead against this so-called privatization of ECG. Dead against it. Are we always going to run down our institutions to sell it off? At the present moment, Ghana Gas owes VRA. GMPC is being owed huge amounts of money.
VRA owes Ghana Gas.
Well, VRA owes Ghana Gas. Whatever the case is. Okay, thanks for the correction. VRA owes Ghana Gas. If this debt is not paid over the next 4 years, would we now say that Ghana Gas cannot meet their obligations, so we are selling it to another private company? Is it something we intentionally do to make our institutions non-viable so that private sector can come in? Don't get me wrong, I'm not against private sector, but the right thing should be done. At the present moment, ECG, government owes ECG quite a lot of money, and for me the basis of this thing is money. That's the basis. Where government can find money to make sure that ECG keeps its head above water. When it comes to the technical aspects of ECG and Ghanaians running it, Ghanaians can run it perfectly. I have a problem, even if you say you're going to kind of privatize. I have a problem with the 20-30 years span of it, because it's evolving, it's modular. Things would change within 20 to 30 years. So many things would have changed. I gave an example of Ghana Telecom today. We sold it to Vodafone. Would we say Vodafone is giving us the kind of service that we require? Hasn't Ghana Telecom, with Vodafone now taking over, hasn't it been slashed down tremendously? That now we in Ghana here do not have a telecoms company that we own. There are some strategic assets that we really and truly cannot just give up, because those coming in their responsibility is to their shareholders. If they come in, they bring in these amounts of money, and they realize they are not making money from the tariffs we are giving them, would they not scream for increased tariffs? And if they scream for increased tariffs, is it not the ordinary man who's going to pay those increased tariffs? Come on, let's sit and look at this thing properly. Private sector is not a bad thing. I don't mind if they did come in and they said, okay, we are giving to the private sector with, they do it the way the oil industry is doing it. Anybody coming in, if you want to drill oil, you have to have a local content partner. You have to have a Ghanaian as a local content partner. If they were doing it in that way, that okay, X company is coming in, but that X company coming in should have a Ghanaian local content partner, if for nothing at all, to oversee, to make sure that the Ghanaians working in ECG would be protected. Because look, private company coming in is interested in the money it puts in and how much it takes out. Sure. Now, a lot of capital flight will come into this thing because this company is coming in, and if it's going to be a foreign company, we'll send their money out. We'll not keep their money here. We'll send their money out. I also blame government, and any government that comes, and the governments in the past, that we haven't been able to make sure that our banking system is well financed to handle some of these projects. Even when you syndicate banks to raise money for projects, they cannot raise more than $10 million. So what are we doing? We are actually now saying that we are increasing the number of banks. Banks today are not interested in long-term projects. They are not. But that's what banks are there for. To make sure that at least the private sector coming in, the government coming in, would be able to invest in long-term projects to the benefit of the people. Is that happening today? No. So I believe that the Bank of Ghana should look at making sure that we consolidate the banks to a point that they can invest in some of these projects. Why are we always depending on monies from Millennium Challenge account, from we just got money, IMF and all these people? Why are we doing that? That we today in 21st century we are still getting money from them? Look at Rwanda, even next door Cote d'Ivoire, who have come out of a war. Go and see what they are doing. Have we ever been in a war before in Ghana? The most we've done is coup. The most we've done is coup. So far as I'm concerned, Ghana at this present moment should be flying high in terms of everything we do. But we are not. We are not. Nigeria now, who have realized the effectiveness of gas. Look at what they are doing. They had flared gas all these years. Look at what they are doing. Right now, where you look at our fuel. Kofi was saying that we have maximum
surplus, actually.
Surplus. That maximum surplus depends on the availability of fuel. Depends on the availability of fuel, and it depends on that fuel taking us over duration of time. If we do not have adequate fuel to fire these generation plants we've got, we are back to doom so. If Kofi could have told me that, look, we have now secured X amount of financing so that in case FPSO Kwame Nkrumah, which is out of circulation now, and FPSO Atta Mills is not working, we have money to buy fuel to now fuel our plants. If he cannot tell me that, then whatever the case is, we cannot have maximum
Very well. Yes,
well, you can answer. Okay. Let me finish. Yeah, no, when I finish, you can answer. Let me finish. Let me finish.
Yes.
So for me, where this ECG privatization is concerned, if for nothing at all, let's put it on the stock market. Let's see how many Ghanaians would buy into it. And I'm sure Ghanaians will buy into it because electricity affects all of us. I don't understand why we should open it up to foreigners to come in. Stock market is there. Let's put up in the stock market. Let Ghanaians buy and let's raise the amount of money that we require. How much are they bringing? 400 million? Are you saying we can't raise 400 million in Ghana? And apart from that, once we do that, let's now go into ECOWAS. Let's get all the ECOWAS countries, because that problem pertains to all West African countries. Let's see how best we can sustain energy within ECOWAS. Because right now we have the West African gas pipeline. It's bringing in gas. There are other things we can do to bring everybody on board so that at least we have a system that would make sure we have electricity. We can look at our industrial plans. We can look at how the national development of West Africa would help everybody. And most of all, is a strong economy and being able to find jobs for the people so that the people can pay for these utilities.
Very well. Yes, Ms. Okwe. So there's this overwhelming support for privatization according to the ASEP report, that more than 80%, yes. And the reason behind that is that Ghanaians want reliable but affordable supply, constant supply of electricity. Is privatization going to ensure this?
Thank you very much. Listening to my brother Kwame, Kwame, of course, is also in the energy field. We've done a lot of work in that area. And I remember when he was in charge of energy at the CPP, I always used to tease him. I said, oh, you are the shadow energy minister. So you help Ghana with a lot of energy policy. So it's an area that, as we double in, we like to share a lot of ideas. And I must say the minds meet mostly, except he coming from a socialist background and me coming from what I would call center right. We differ a little on some of these things. Before I go on to this issue of the concession, or what has been termed concessionaire instead of privatization, I just want to say that we have to look at some of these things in the context of what works. Because, for example, and President John Mahama himself referred to it, the Vodafone issue was a sinking ship in that Ghana Telecom owed so much money. The government of Ghana, from the period of President Rawlings, tried to solve that problem. They couldn't. They brought in the Malaysians. They were not able to handle it, if you remember. We went back to owning our own company. We still owed so much money. So we decided that we are going to give it to Vodafone, but we didn't give it 100%.
Why do we get
No, I'm coming. No, I'm coming.
Why do we get
Don't worry. I just want to say what works, some of it. And Ghana owns now 30% of something that is working. So now, instead of us having 100% of just debt, now we have 30% of, well, I mean, you can term it whatever, but 30% of profit. And as I said, President John Mahama referred to it as something that's working. So I also think we are better off in that angle. But now, let us look at this issue of the ASEP survey. Energy is a very peculiar industry because everything in your country doesn't work on telephony, but energy. And energy has been privatized in some places that has worked. In the UK, for example, they found it very difficult to privatize energy for a very long time. Until now, it seems to be working for them. I personally am against it. But that's my personal opinion. So that 80%, I'm not one of it. Mr. Jantua is not one of it. Here, if we were to count, I don't think we'll get 80%. Here, the four of us. Because I presume Kofi will be against it. And I may also presume the same for you. So why and what is the problem? Because
Mr. Jantua, one thing,
quickly.
The UK, when they privatize, they open the distribution system up for other companies to come in.
Yes.
Which is the question I was going to.
So that's what I'm saying. That yes. So it's about competition.
Yes.
So yes. So I was going there because now we have monopoly, and so it's about competition. That's the next thing I was going to go to. ASEP is saying that if we make it private, it will be reliable, affordable, and will make it proactive. I don't know about affordability. The rest we can argue. But as for affordability, it is going to get into the realms of what we term in the industry economic tariff. An economic tariff means that they must charge what will give them profit at the end of the day, unlike the situation we have here. But what is the history or the antecedent to all of this? You remember we had NewDay 1, which gave Ghana about 500 million US dollars. And when we got this 500 million US dollars, they told us that we should mainly use it for roads. So if you remember the N1, a lot of cocoa roads and so on and so forth benefited from it. Even up to Gimpa has also benefited. But the condition for Meter 2, which is $488 million dollars, is for energy. However, that's where we are stuck. They gave us certain conditions. And this is where I now have a problem with the current government. That instead of being honest, that these conditions, including the conditions by the IMF, because you know the IMF, one of the conditions they gave for us to go into IMF bailout was to withdraw subsidies, was this issue. And that's how now we had a situation where subsidy was given a new nickname. What was it called? If you remember or recall. Subsidy, instead of subsidy, they say realignment in this country. Your neck is tied. One of the conditions was that ECG must be privatized for 25 years. Okay. 2.
20 to 30 years.
Yeah, it's 25. Actually, they have given roughly, but I'm giving the specific. 25 years. Yes. 2. What they are saying is that the debt of ECG owed by the government must be paid. You remember that controversy about the government trying to raise money to pay the ECG debt, which became a huge brouhaha. 3, economic tariff. So the government, in preparation towards this, because they want that MIDA money, they had to increase the tariff. And that was why in 2015, the tariff was increased by astronomical figure of, I think, 60% or so. Which we all,
69%.
Yeah, 69%. Thank you. And we were rather told that, oh, it's 69%. But what most people experience, I don't know about you, but in my house, I'm paying over 100%. So later on, when the ECG was called, they said the 69% was a lower average. I don't want lower average figures. I want, if not upper average, at least average, middle average. That's what's average. You can't give me lower average and call it average. So what most Ghanaians are experiencing is a tariff or utility increase of about 100%. That was the first thing. Now, instead of the government owning up to that, so that you see, we sit down and we see how to resolve the problem. Then the experts in the industry, we can all sit down and say, look, this can work, this won't work. We give opinions. As my brother rightly said, that when the government is doing certain things, they must also ask for other opinions, so that when people are on board, they will be able to not only contribute, but because they feel they are on board, there won't be that kind of resistance. Or later, certain revelations will come out, which, for example, the government may not have had the opportunity to consider, because we know 2 heads are better than 1. So when it came to this issue of concessionaire and all the rest of it and blah blah blah, we got into a situation where the government increased the tariff, then they rather went to blame the billing system.
So, Ms. Okoye, what you're saying that there was a plan to accumulate some money
and
to
that
pay
was
off.
And that was why the tariffs were increased in response to what MIDA has demanded of us, economic tariff. So when this billing system issue came, of course the ECG had to go to Parliament and explain to them that with computer software, when you have anything of 3% or below, as you know, it is not what we call a system failure. It is just normal problem. And they came and explained to Parliament that the percentage of problems with the bills was 0.09%, less than 1%. Meaning, therefore, that there was not a problem with the billing system, as the ruling party was trying to let us believe, as the reason why we were paying those astronomical figures. So then that became accepted. Ask yourself, with the current tariffs that we have, are we able to afford to compete internationally with business, industry, manufacturing? Apart from the fact that we have a lousy about 1% in terms of manufacturing. Now, as was mentioned on the other side of the table, let's compare ourselves to Cote d'Ivoire. If you're looking at the system of measuring energy in terms of electricity, you do it kilowatts per hour. So, in Ghana, what is our kilowatt per hour compared to Ivory Coast, who just came from a war? and theirs is about 14 cents per kilowatt hour. And yet in Ghana, we have about 23 cents per kilowatt hour.
18 to 20.
You understand? Especially in a commercial. Do you understand? So when our figures are so astronomically different, straight away the production of a bottle of water in Ghana, okay, is an additional 5 to 10 cents more expensive in Ghana than in Cote d'Ivoire. So now when it comes to the conglomerate of operating in West Africa, where you want to compete in terms of industry, we are not able to. So this issue of energy is so big. In fact, it's such a humongous problem that we need to sit down and resolve this issue.
So now, in other words, this privatization will not necessarily lead to what Ghanaians are expecting, which is reliable.
And then it came to the issue of it came to the issue of, because they didn't want to use the word privatization, then they said, okay, it is concessionaire, and then the concessionaire means that we are going to give it away like a concession for 25 years. Everything that applies to privatization applies, but after 25 years, then we'll either renegotiate or we'll take it back. All of these technicalities don't help one way or the other.
Please be wrapping up.
Yes, what we need to do is, if this MIDA thing is hanging on our neck, IMF issues are hanging on our neck, let us bring out the real issues. Because once, for example, you're an alcoholic and you admit that I have an alcoholic problem, that is when you can go into rehab to rehabilitate yourself. If we don't admit the little problems that we have, the reasons why we have to increase the tariff, and let the people know that this is fine, and then find a way to say that this is only for a short period. Because you see, we have just come out of doing so. A lot of companies have laid people off, so they need a bit of respite. Just as the thing was being sorted out around December, such high increase of tariff does not allow the companies to breathe, to expand, and to even be able to deal with their problems. So today you have low occupancy in hotels, for example, and yet higher bills. How will they be able to close those margins that are the case? We shouldn't make this an issue of politics. It's an issue of business, it's an issue of employment, and it's an issue of the engine that will move the country to the next level.
Great. I would want us to, yes.
One question.
Quickly, and then we move on to the...
Just a minute, Kofi. Just a minute.
Briefly, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Adams, because there are a number of issues I know you would want to react to.
If we are going to put ECG out as a concession, do we still pay the levies?
Those are good questions. We probably will have
Are the levies still going to be invoked for Ghanaians to pay? That question needs to be asked.
Because in any case, the levy was to amortize all the debt, which we would have paid before we actually get into the whole Compact 2 agreement. Yes, Mr. Adams.
Yeah, I believe that some of the questions he's asking are the things that we should look out for in detail, instead of completely staying away and just opposing that I am against this move. I believe that let's look at what it is that is in the details. Moving on, I don't know where Mike got his figures from. I received a chart when a technical report came out with the recently utilized tariff increases that clearly indicated that even for the highest consumer of over 1,000 kilowatts per hour, the percentage that should have come to him as an increment of his bill was not supposed to be more than 93%. So if anybody paid more than 100%, it means that it was a problem with the billing system. So I don't know where he got his information. We're back to this whole billing controversy. I don't know where he got that information from, that the billing system was not a problem.
Well, to be fair, I think that was a general thing that was out there, which and
that have been resolved, and people have felt the relief enough.
So indeed, there was an over.
There was an over as a result of the billing system.
No.
As a result of the billing system. And
I
that
don't
has
have
been
billing
cleared.
system. I have prepaid.
Well,
so we're back to that controversy. I believe that was resolved.
The prepaid had that issue. The prepaid is also calculated. You think that because it's prepaid, it's not calculated? It's also calculated. Moving on.
But the fact remains, yes, that we're paying those high sums.
Every industry, the wish of every industry is to have reliable power. It is better than having to go purchase your own diesel and power your own plant. Côte d'Ivoire, for me, would not be the best example that we should give when it comes to discussing issues of energy. And Lawyer Jantua here will tell you that it is cheaper to produce power for industry than for homes. Distributing power for industry is so also what? Cheaper, because you are just putting one line for a huge consumption. But for homes, the amount of money you need to transmit power to individual homes that consume bits and pieces, it costs you so much. I am told, I stand to be corrected, that Côte d'Ivoire have less than 50% of power coverage in their country. So the concentration is much more just down south here. Concentration is just much more down south here. So in comparing these two, we will seriously be making some very high mistakes. Also, the source of fuel for generating power in Côte d'Ivoire happens to be much more cheaper and available than in our case.
Which raises issues about
and
decisions
that is
we
why,
have taken.
That is why you must endorse this government for taking steps to build gas processing facility that it owns. The ownership of that facility. You can imagine if we didn't have ownership of what? The Atuabo gas, the Ghana gas processing plant. You could imagine what would have been happening to us. That is why government is still working to have GPP2, to also have ownership of it, in order to have a control regulated. I agree with him that yes, VRA owes Ghana Gas. Yes, it's true, VRA owes Ghana Gas. You can just imagine if Ghana Gas was not agency that we had a hand in, what would have been passed on to the consumer ultimately. And that is why this government is taking the right steps to dealing with the energy issue by making sure that right investment all the time, because that is the only way that you can solve this problem. It's not just about talking and picking Côte d'Ivoire and saying Côte d'Ivoire has this and Ghana has this. Côte d'Ivoire has less than 50% coverage. If Côte d'Ivoire decide to do what Ghana has done already, you will not be talking same about Côte d'Ivoire. Long before even Côte d'Ivoire went to had war issues, they did not have the same coverage even as Ghana had. We had extended much more power to our rural communities than La Côte d'Ivoire has done.
So I'm saying that because they have, well, you're saying, I don't have the verify yet, but that because...
but that is the case. That one, you don't need Ghana is second when it comes to Africa, the whole of Africa, so and first in West Africa.
Côte d'Ivoire is not able to, or its spread is not as high as Ghana. They are able to produce at a cheaper rate.
Not that they are just able to produce at a cheaper rate. They are so limited in what it is that they extend. They are so limited. They are only covering something very minimal. And I talked about the material. Ghana now with GPP2 coming on stream, what it means is that you will have more gas.
Very well.
And when you have more gas, you are not going to be using light crude. Light crude, of course, he asked me that can government give assurance that
I want you to hold on to your thoughts there, please.
And this is NewDay Saturday edition. The conversations are ongoing. I'll take some quick messages and then turn to Mr. Kofi Adams for his submission. Then we wrap up on this segment. This says, I absolutely agree with Mr. Jantua. We must go back to the parliamentary system, scrap the position of a vice president and replace it with a prime minister. This is Kofi Kekeli in Hachu. NPP is buying votes, same as NDC. Why is the NPP man in the studio making it look like they don't do same? Why can't Mr. Jantua be president? He always makes my day whenever he is in the studio. He always talks and analyzes issues with fact. Why aren't you president, Mr. Good morning.
Wrong party. No, who said wrong
party?
Good morning, Abna.
Okay, why should the gifts, no, this is not clear. I'm sorry, I would have to skip it. I strongly support the privatization of the ECG. The conduct of the workers, especially in Tema Community 11, is very bad and disrespectful. They go to break and come back in 2 hours' time. If you dare open your mouth, you will regret. This cannot happen in the private sector. You will be fired. This is Markston. Another one here, Damien Abanja from East Legon says, doling out gifts by any party to voters in order to induce them to vote is unacceptable. But what is even more reprehensible and ironic is the fact that the party that claims it has done unprecedented infrastructure is panicking about its impending defeat and now seeks to buy the conscience of the voting public. Ghanaians are discerning. Another one says, Abna, when it comes to selling of government companies to private individuals, the NPP should bow down their heads in shame because they sold almost all companies and they collapsed completely. But now we are not selling ECG totally. We're not selling ECG totally, yet NPP are making noise. ECG privatization is the best option the government can take, and the president has assured the workers that they will not lose their jobs. This is Coach Dunga in Wa. Another one says, Kofi Adams is right. As you are discussing the issue of power right now, half of Nima is in darkness for the past 3 days because their transformer got burned and the ECG are working on it to make sure the people get light. Ko Sami in Nima. With this one says, the youth cannot continue to live a life of despondency and frustration brought about as a result of the ongoing economic suffocation under President John Dramani Mahama's stewardship. Any mistake to retain the NDC will spell doom for the youth. This is Seth in Hohoi. Another one saying, good morning, Abna. The problem is not privatization. What we need is better management for that sector. With correct leadership and better management, it will work. We are our own problems. This is Kofi Wayo in Santa Maria. Kofi Agbemava in Keta says, NPP and CDD should give us a break. Should we say since it's election year, government work should cease because President Mahama has an election to win? And where from this hypocrisy from the media too, they seem to be oblivious to the fact that outboard motors and pants have been given to people in the past under the same government. Good morning, Abna. Please ask the NPP man and Mr. Jantua whether they listened to the president during the State of the Nation address when he said 3,000 outboard motors will be distributed to fisher folks along the coast. I know, but in any case, it's about the timing, you know, perhaps that's what the issue that's coming up. Now, does ECG pay government when it buys them, as in when government buys them vehicles and most of their machinery? Let's stop this government owes ECG business. The debt is mutual. Aram Adenta news sites. Another one is this, that why is it that people who have, when Ghana Telecom was privatized in 2008, the same NDC people demonized it and made huge political gains out of it. Now they are in government and want to privatize ECG. They should go ahead and do it. In fact, they should do it before December 7th. Ghanaians are waiting for them with their voter IDs and thumbs. This is Oliver Jan in Pokwase. Great. We'll put a halt on the messages now, but please do keep them coming through. We'll be reading them as we go. Mr. Kofi Adams, you were making your submission, please.
So, as we're talking about the issues of energy, you can see clearly a detailed investment in that sector. Indeed, government has made it quite clear that unlike in the past, where we've had investment in energy generation that has, for example, one fuel source only, we must depart from that so that we'll have investment in energy plants that will have to use 2 or more fuel sources. Like if you take the Sonny Asogli power plant, for example, it only relies on gas. So once there is no gas, even if you have light crude, you cannot power it. That government is departing from that. You must make sure you have a combined fuel usage so that if gas is available, which is cheaper, you use it. If there is for one reason or the other, gas isn't available, and then you have to use light crude, you can be able to what? Switch on to the light crude and be able to power your plants and continue to generate power for the people. That is where, when the president said that he's equally working to make sure that the issue of energy deficit is dealt with, these are some of such examples. There is also investment, as I indicated earlier, in the oil finds that we are having to make sure that gas processing facility, we continue to invest and have ownership of it. Because if you do not have ownership of it, the owners can decide where they want to send their gas to. And that is why this government needs commendation for steps it has taken in dealing with the matter of what? Energy. As for promises or talk about it, yes, people will talk about it because they feel that, oh, there is an issue or there was an issue. But the solution to the problem is what exactly is being done now. Indeed, if you ask, for example, Mike, or you ask Nanado, what is the alternative to what the NDC is doing in terms of energy generation? They do not have. Indeed, what they will tell you may even be less than what is being done already. Because it is not magic. You cannot do magic to generate power.
But I guess what has been clear in the past, I mean, in recent times, is that fuel security is an issue. And that if you have that, you can get the power generation ongoing.
Fuel security has never been,
because that has,
an issue.
No, getting fuel to power the plants.
We had VRA had an issue with their supplier, not because it was a money issue. Sahara was the only supplier of VRA. Sahara had issues in Nigeria, so Sahara could not lift because there were issues in Nigeria, not because also they did not have a right to lift, but because of the issues of strikes and all that was going on.
And finally, have alternative sources.
Because that's why I have just told you, VRA had a contractual agreement with Sahara. They did not have any contract with any other supplier. The one who was to supply them was also only taken from what? Nigeria. That was the unfortunate situation. But subsequently, they got 950,000 barrels, which was delivered in the western zone and then also the eastern zone, which has been processed and stored.
Over what duration of time?
I have just indicated to you clearly, Mr. Jantwa, that there were issues that VRA had with their supplier.
Yes, so
in other words,
what's
the
duration of time of that?
I can't tell the duration, but what I do know is that they had issues with their supplier, which you admit that they had issues because the supplier could not lift, but subsequently he's been able to do so. And that is why government have directed TOR and BOST to now take steps to also make sure that as a country, we have huge storage of such facilities so that when it happens in the future, BOST and TOR pair the arrangement, they can move in to deal with the situation. You see, BOST used to be a debt reading company until this government took over. So you see, now BOST is alive and doing so well.
We can do it.
Of course, we can do it. TOR has just been brought on stream. I'm a member of the BOST board, and I'm proud to be associated with a board and management that have turned the situation around. Look at the fuel supply. Do you see any queue at the filling stations again?
But let me go back to something you raised in your, just a few seconds ago about the agreement we had with Sahara, which pretty much was an exclusive agreement. On hindsight, is it something we should do?
That's VRA.
Yes, but is it something that we should?
But is it something? That's VRA that have to answer why they choose to do that.
But that is interesting.
That is why I am saying after government have it, because you cannot be reviewing every detailed arrangement that an institution like VRA will have with their suppliers.
But it's interesting.
But then having realized the impact.
Exactly.
But I'm saying that having realized the impact, government through the alternative that it can do has taken steps to solve that. And I thought that.
Anyways, now let's move on.
I wanted to make a quick point.
Mr. Jantwa.
Yes.
Lawyer Jantwa. I don't think that you are suggesting that government on daily basis should be interfering in the activities of VRA.
No, they shouldn't be interfering.
They should monitor
to make sure that VRA doesn't get into a position where they've gotten
what I'm saying is that all of us didn't know that we will wake up one day and as a result of another country's government policy, we will be confronted with this situation. Having been confronted with that, you have seen the wonderful step and initiative that immediately government moved and said, look, BOST, TOR, put into an arrangement in place to make sure now you store this fuel in large quantities to forestall any future occurrences. I do not know what directives government may be giving to VRA, for example, in terms of their purchase agreement with companies. I do not know why they do that. But at least these instructions have gone out.
Great. I just want to say quickly here, we need to wrap up here, but we'll be moving on to the issue about liberalizing the distribution sector of our energy sector, because then it raises issues about pricing and making it competitive and all. We'll be going on to that. But this issue about the VRA thing, it's interesting that this is coming, because not too long ago, we're talking about VRA and the ceding of certain assets to certain private entities. And I mean, the Ministry of Power was at the forefront. I remember we raised this issue and it was like, yes, I mean, the Ministry of Power could actually go and do that. But if we're trying to distinguish between...
VRA is a state...
Exactly. So why is it that it's
I'm talking
okay
about the governance principle.
It's okay for a certain situation
governance
to have...
principle. They are two different things.
Ministry lead, but then another time it's not.
There are two different things. We have governance principle of how to run daily supplies activities and maybe a certain change in direction.
When it comes to assets disposal, yes, the ministry can come in. Is that what you're saying?
Because it's a state owned.
But no, if it's management,
if the shareholding, it belongs to the state. So to take any decision, you have to go back to the ministry for some decision.
But not the ministry leading it.
You cannot do it. You cannot do it all alone. For example, if you take Bust, when we want to
Mr.
do something,
Adams,
we have to go to the ministry for permission, because it is government owned. Even though our day-to-day arrangement, agreements, and that we do it at the board and management level.
Yes, your final thoughts on this matter, and then we move on to the liberalization. Yes.
Oh, finally. Because after Mr. Janto had a second bite to the cherry,
you finally have it.
Well,
okay.
I haven't.
Really?
No, I haven't.
Oh well,
now you have it. Take it away.
Kofi spoken before the break. After the break, now I finally get a chance.
Yes.
Your time is ticking.
And they still want to talk.
No, Mr. Adams, no.
Mr.
So
your
I see.
time is ticking.
Yes,
I'm very happy that finally I also have the
go on.
opportunity to go on on the issue. First of all, there was a texter who sent some wrong information that MPP privatized so. I want him to know, for the sake of correction, that the NDC privatized over 300 state companies.
You're privatized.
So no.
Very well.
Kwame, don't make the thing.
You're privatized.
Please, let me make my point. So any person who, for example, maybe is young and was not in this country up to 2000 may not know. So please, let me let you know, over 300. So don't ever.
Okay, so yes, let's move on.
You have spoken now.
Let's move on. There's been some privatization by both sides. Yes. Now to the substantive issue. Yes.
So that is the issue, and that is a fact. So those who don't know the history, please know
that you didn't sell Ghana telephone.
Okay, please move. Yes.
And Ghana Airways.
No, but Mr. Okwe, you constantly be interjecting.
I know, but you rather should then tell him to stop.
I told him, so please carry on.
Yeah, I think you should focus on him to stop rather than me to.
But I want you to also move on, so please.
Thank you. I can move on, but I can move on only if the person stops. I'm entitled to that.
Time,
no, it's not wasting time. I can talk. I can talk.
No, Mr. Adams, please allow him. Yes, Mr. Okwe, carry on.
No respect for the viewers. But anyway, so the issue is, let us get those facts straight. Now, when it comes to the issue of government making excuses with regard to our high utility prices, Ghanaians know the energy levy you have put on our bills. It's a tax. Ghanaians know the VAT you have put on our bills. It's a tax. Please tell Ghanaians the truth, that it is because of your policy of tax. That's why we are all suffering. Let everybody know.
Okay, we are moving on to the liberalization issue.
If I can make my last point.
Is this not energy?
Please.
Just
a minute, he let him land and then you come in. Mr. Okwe, briefly, yes. We need to move on to the other topic.
Nothing like briefly. Kofi, you had a long chat. Let me also.
No, but we're wrapping up. These are
you can't wrap up. Otherwise, if you like, you can take it now. But you can't wrap up when I'm talking. Please, I beg you to give me a bit of extended time. I want Kofi Adams' time. So, as we're talking about this, we want to tell Ghanaians the truth about our utility price system. Ghanaians are there suffering. They must know why they are suffering. It is because of government policy to tax us in terms of these issues. What is the biggest problem with ECG at the moment? And who is the biggest debtor? Government.
It was worse under you.
Mr. Adams, please. Then to
Government Government is the West, so they must tell us the truth. The government, in terms of even ministries, municipalities, districts, and so, they owe so much money. They owe ECG over 500 million at the last count. So when you come and sit here and try to make it look as if the government has put certain policies in place, we know that your energy policies are hopeless. And when it came to talking about Ivory Coast, I'm happy that you rightly pointed out to him, although he wasn't listening. We are not talking about coverage. We are talking about the cost of electricity, the kilowatt per hour. The problem we have here in terms of the cost of electricity relative to consumption and...
They are using gas.
Mr. Adams, please.
Thank you very much.
You should not confuse the fuel that is used in generating the
please,
power.
let him, he's making his point. Please allow him.
Thank you very much. So these are the issues that we need to look at, because if you come and tell us that, oh, and the coverage of Ghana is better than Ivory Coast, that's not the issue we're dealing with. We are dealing with the cost of electricity to the Ghanaian in terms of consumption at home and production in the industry. It is too high. We need to find a solution to that. And what are they telling us about gas? Is this not the same government who made two drastically wrong gas decisions? One, you know, we had a contract with Trinidad and Tobago to have a gas plant in this country. Not only did this government come and rescind that contract, they moved from Bonre to Atuabo. That in itself delayed us by 3 years. And within the 3 years, we have Dumso for 3 years to 4 years. And so if you have created a policy decision which affected the energy industry to lead to that delay, today don't come and sit here and tell us that you have made any good decision for the industry. Now look at the issue of gas. Ghana, we owe Gas of Nigeria over $100 million we owe, and we are not able to pay, and so the gas is cut, and you are telling us that Asogli uses only gas. So if we were paying like we should be paying for the crude, then we will get the cheaper gas and it will be working.
Nigeria
but where
don't even have gas to run their power.
Well, Nigeria is not the only gas.
No,
Yeah.
Mr. Adams,
Nigeria
we can't continue like this. No, the interjections are just.
So I just want the viewers to be listening to the issue. Then they make their minds, because they will know the abawum, the one that has seed in the
you
fruit.
should be wrapping up.
Yes, thank you very much for that reminder. So when you owe Nigeria gas, are you telling me that if Nigeria doesn't exist, Ghana will not have gas? You see why a bad workman always blames his tools? And this is one of the reasons why Ghanaians are disappointed with NDC, because when we have challenges, instead of finding ways to solving the problem, they rather go around, hey, and then they will making noise. That's not what we need. We need a government that when crude prices go to 147, you solve it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Okwe.
Please let me just wrap up on this last one. Thank you. We want a government who, when there are problems, they resolve the problems. When there are issues of food shortage, you sit down and say, the taxes that me, the government, I'm supposed to take from you, I'm going to remove it to make your life easier, not increase it to make your life more difficult.
Thank you very much. Now we move on. Finally, we are talking about the liberalization. No. Mr. Kofi Adams, no. I am... Mr. Okwe, please. Mr. Dantua, yes. I am... You had your turn. No, you had your turn. And then he had his... Yes, Mr. Dantua.
He said things that
Mr. Adams, no, please. I have Mr. Dantua is on the floor.
So Mr. Dantua is on the floor.
Mr. Dantua is on the floor. Allow him. I'll come to you. Mr. Okwe, please. Mr. Dantua, yes.
The issue is not about whether we privatize or not privatize. The issue is, what framework are we putting in place to get the best out of the players in the sector? That's the issue. Now, are we ensuring that, one, the tariffs meet the real cost? What's the real cost? Production, operations, maintenance, plus any appropriate returns necessary to encourage the continuous investment in the sector? 2, are we ensuring that the revenues are appropriately apportioned to the players in the sector, and thereby full cost recovery by all? Now, any legacy debt that we have, should be treated, so far as I'm concerned, with a special tariff, and the banks, fuel suppliers, and other creditors are made whole within that agreed period of time. Now, because of time, I won't go on.
Yes.
There are others. And so, the framework that we put in place, these companies that we see they are coming in, who is going to make sure that that framework put in place is going to be able for these suppliers and companies within the sector achieve full cost recovery, so that we don't have to go back to it.
Exactly, and that requires a certain transparency and openness
Exactly.
about the whole process.
Exactly.
Yes. Mr. Kofi Adams, briefly, and then we wrap up on this. We need to move on.
Thank you very much.
No.
Lawyer Jantwes,
No, we can't carry on like no. He's just,
Lawyer Jantwes' questions
He's
most
responding to Mr.
acceptable
Kofi, yes.
and to the point. These are the questions we should be asking of the whole process, but not sit and move on with an information that is not the case and push to attack a project that his questions are so relevant. Look, Ghana is having a mix of generation. As we speak today, the car power ship, the power generated there, is the cheapest you can get in the sub-region. Is the cheapest you can get in the sub-region. But when you add those who are using light crude, those who are using gas for other processes, car power, water, that's hydro, then that is where you get an average which gives you a certain higher percentage in terms of kilowatt per hour.
I think we're going back to that.
We cannot sit here and pretend like government has not taken right decisions.
Thank you very much.
We will not sell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kofi Adams. We're moving on. I wanted us to look at the possibility of liberalization in terms of the distribution sector, because it has issues, yes, but we need to move on to look at the 10 oil fields, which has been commissioned by the president. And we're looking at a production capacity of between 20,000 and 23,000 barrels per day.
That's for now.
That's for now. It says there's a likelihood of us upping it by some 5,000. So we'll be looking at it. But this, we've had the benefit.
80,000.
Okay. So we've had the benefit of the Jubilee oil fields. I mean, before then, it was uncharted territory. Now we have some lessons to learn from activities of the Jubilee oil fields. And in my introduction, I had talked about the fact that initially, the Jubilee oil fields was projected to have a production capacity of about 150,000 barrels per day. And then when production started, we went to 100,000. And then recently, in May 2016,
it was 120,000
okay.
barrels per day.
That's okay. But now we're doing 33,000. Now, my thing is this. In view of all of that, how, moving forward, given that production levels have an impact, or, yes, they have an impact on revenue generation for our national budget and all, how are we to look at the projected capacity in terms of 10 oil field, which is looking at 20,000, 23,000.
Yeah, thank you very much for starting with me once again.
Yes, I just want to, you know.
Please, you said?
No, not you. He was talking to me. Please carry on.
First and foremost, we must all admit that the first agreement that was done by the government of Ghana was so poorly and badly done. It did not help us as a country. It did not at all. And that is why I'm so happy that this government now has taken steps to make sure that as a country, we benefit a lot more from our oil finds. A lot more laws have been passed to make sure that the local content is made most part of the processes. Indeed, the FPSO at Mills, which was just inaugurated some few days ago, had a lot of involvement of local hands, and some of the fabrications were actually done here and done by local companies. And so investment of close to about $1 billion or more remain in this country. This is not to suggest that even the foreign component, everything went out. Though some of it will, of course, will remain there, but at least about $1 billion or more of it went into the local partners, who, of course, will also reinvest in other areas. So I'm so happy about what the Petroleum Commission has been able to do through government support to have this coming on. Then the industry has not been too good in recent times, and that is why you would observe that countries like Saudi Arabia, who get their oil on the land, not even in the high seas and the rest, have actually suffered a lot of deficit in terms of their economic management. I watch CNN and observe that India, for example, have to send food aid to their nationals who are in Saudi working there, because the economy cannot even support basic foods and needs of these persons in that country. That is how far the international crude oil price have affected a lot of countries. Angola today is equally also suffering same. Ghana just entered into that industry and therefore have done fresh investments and have put a lot of hope on it. Unfortunately, there is this dip in the international price, meaning that revenues are low. Even the quantities that were expected,
we are not getting it.
We are not getting it. But you observe that in all this, government has still been able to run a country as if nothing has happened.
Well, I think that's that's of course a subjective view of it.
You
People out there
can say
make their judgment, but that's
subjective.
fine.
I am just talking about a country like Saudi Arabia now depending on food aid for people to be able to survive. And I'm telling you that Ghana has been able to, whether you agree or not, it's not for you to agree with me. I don't think that I've come here to speak for you to agree with everything that I say. So you leave it for the viewers to judge. But what I'm saying is that government has been able to, despite these challenges, that the expected volumes have been so lowered, as you yourself admitted, from expected 120,000 to less than 40,000 now. Looking at the prices at the time, even the budget was read, what we were expecting and what is coming in, government continue to run and continue to attract investment in that area. This is because government is taking right decisions in that area.
Very well. I need to move on. We are running out of time, so we need to take a piece of it. But Mr. Janswa, how do we ensure that we get the optimal benefits from this? I'm looking at the levels of production we are experiencing, compounded with the volatility in terms of oil prices on the international market, which has an impact on our revenue.
The production of oil, of a fresh field like the 10 project, is a ramp-up situation. So they would start from a production of 20,000, 23,000 and ramp up to the maximum, which I think 10 is about 80,000 barrels a day when it gets to its maximum peak. But it all depends on how we look at and set our benchmark revenue. Because in Ghana, 70% of the oil revenue goes into the consolidated fund. And so for government to be able to estimate how much they would get out of the revenue, they need to estimate a benchmark revenue. Now, of late, or in the duration for the last 6 years, we saw a situation where the oil revenue was volatile, going up and coming down. And so we used a benchmark revenue of $100 at a certain point, and it fell. The price fell, and when it fell, that benchmark revenue was stuck. We couldn't move that benchmark revenue. We then moved it down.
So we didn't hedge?
Yes, we didn't hedge. And so we then moved it down to another percentage, and the price moved again. And so we now had a gap of revenue coming in.
Right.
Now, let me make the point that the percentage of revenue coming from the oil industry into the economy is only 5%. It's not much. It's nothing to write home about. And so it's not the oil revenue that we should be concentrating on. It is how that oil revenue is spread within the economy to make sure that we have enough money to do
So whatever we get out
things.
of it, let's
Yes.
show that.
Now,
let's ensure
at
that.
PIAC, when you look at the reports that we have brought out, we realize that most of the oil revenue that has come out has been thinned so thinly into so many projects that to even get the impact, Ghanaians don't see what that impact is. In terms of local content, I think we can go further. How can we go further? At the present moment, we are looking at offshore drilling. Offshore, where we are getting hydrocarbons from the sea and not on land. To be able to train people, we need to be able to train them so that they have the high capacity technical know-how to do offshore. Presently, we are decommissioning Saltpond Field. And in decommissioning, you are now breaking it up and dissolving the company. Why do we do that? Why don't we use Saltpond as a training ground for Ghanaians, where we train Ghanaians in the expertise of offshore drilling? Would that not help us? Would we not build the local content, technicalities, and the people that we need to be employed in the industry? Because right now, government has signed nearly 30 contracts offshore. When all these start coming into production, that is, if we find oil in all these blocks, come 2020 going on to 2025, 2026, we would need people. We would need a lot of people. We need a lot of Ghanaians to be in that business.
Right.
Are we training them now? No, we are not. So, really and truly, if government says, "Oh, this we build part of the FPSO in this country and all that," yes, that is good, but we need to go further. Now, I come back to the question of whether FPSO, yes, they are very economical to use, but is it the type of unit that we can only use to drill oil offshore? Because look at Kwame Nkrumah FPSO. Now, where is it? If a similar problem also happens with FPSO at Tamils, that stamps everything. We need to have a mix. Government needs to start thinking of that mix. If it is rigs we are bringing in, let's have some rigs
Would the recently passed act, the Petroleum Exploration and Production
EMP.
Act, would it go any way to addressing some of these issues?
It can address some of these issues, but whether government really wants that to happen is another question.
Very well. This is NewDay Saturday edition, and we are talking about the 10 oil project that was recently commissioned by the president. We are looking at how best we can optimize the gains from the oil find since 2007. Mr. Okwe would be making his submissions. Thereafter, I will take some few messages coming in. Yes, Mr. Okwe, let's hear you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very exciting news upon the inauguration of the 10 oil fields, which in the industry is actually known as the Trinidad, Enyera, and Intome oil fields. The three together come to have the nickname
10.
The 10 oil fields. This is a partnership of a few conglomerates in the industry. For example, Talo, they have the majority. We have Anadako in there. We have Cosmos even in there. We have GMPC itself in there, and then Petra SA also in there. So we have various people coming together to syndicate with regard to this.
But pretty much the same as the Jubilee fields, right? The partners here.
The unionization part.
Yeah, to that extent. So the 10 oil fields, with regard to the issue of its coming to being, I also want to use the opportunity to say that yes, we congratulate President John Mahama. It's a good inauguration. It gives us hope and future in this country. I also want to congratulate President Kufuor for having the vision to put in certain policies to refocus GMPC. You know, GMPC those days, they were doing fish farming, all the various things. But to refocus GMPC and give what we call time limits so that people will stop speculation and do exploration. Because, you know, everybody was scared of pumping such huge monies. We know the amount of millions it costs a day to do exploration. So everybody speculates, and they were told, if you speculate and the 5 years is up, your allocation will be given up. So that is what led to the find of the oil. So we are very, very happy about that. And thanks be to God, we were able to get a slightly higher percentage, because in the first instance, between 10 to 13% is what we had, and now we have 15%, which was a different situation. Because you see, when somebody is coming to pump money in a project where you've never found oil before, and they are pumping millions of dollars, where Ghana is sitting back and waiting for a find. If we find, then we share. If we don't find, you carry your losses and you go away. That is a huge burden. And so at that time, we're only able to negotiate about 10 to 13%. Now the oil is there, so now you can have a different bargaining power. We've managed to go up slightly higher to 15%, and I even pray and dare say that maybe the next oil find, some people are saying that the GMPC themselves should be able to go into it. It may not necessarily be a wise idea, because can you imagine GMPC sinking $2 billion and not finding any oil, and it's all a loss? So sometimes other people may carry the burden of the risk, and therefore its profitability and gains thereof in that manner.
But Michael, nowadays there's good technology to be able to identify where the oil is. So you don't just spend. It's the technology. Exactly. You don't just go and spend your money there like that.
And it just guarantees that you're going to get that.
I mean, 3D now can tell you more than what 2D.
What is in there? If you go to Voltaire Basin, you can tell what is.
Very well, please allow him. Yes, we accept that.
Yeah. I'm surprised that once Mr. Jantua was giving a point on that, Kofi is jumping in. What he's saying is that there's technology to do it. Oh, Kofi, relax. But the truth of the matter is that it's still very expensive. You understand? It's not just easy peasy and you go in there and get it. So as much as there's technology, 3D, yes, but how was that even acquired? How is that used? What is the duration of that 3D and its expense thereof? So these are matters, and of course, as I said, that allows GNPC to also go in future. But will we be able to bear the initial costs? That is the question. So until we've answered that question, it doesn't matter the technology we have. We still will not be able to go into exploration ourselves until we can afford it.
Maybe offshore.
Well, but whether onshore, offshore,
but not offshore,
upstream, whatever. All I'm saying is that it's about affordability. Does GNPC have the money? And what I'm saying is that you may have the technology to see if it's there or not. But what if after the initial outlay, you go and there's nothing? That's what I'm saying. Are we able to bear that expense at that loss? These are questions I want answered.
It's
not whether
it's a question of
Kwame. It is not. You can't plan to discover oil.
No, it's not.
You will go there and your plan may
yes, come back.
Let's go back.
Let him come back on road.
He will. But I
think come back on road.
Yes. Essentially, what you're saying is about the
Are we saying that
Mr.
Are we saying that finding oil? Yeah. Are we saying that finding oil once you go, you find oil?
No, that is not what
I think.
So if you want to move on to some other territory, Kwame, I don't understand you.
No, you
I'm
can't.
saying there's no need for the answer because there's making noise. He's not understanding.
There's an asphalt road.
So the issue is that we are not on rough road. Kwame, we are having a chat. We want to educate the public. We want to educate the public. It's a sector you may not understand, so you don't worry. So the initial outlay is very important. I'm saying that if we are not in the position, one, to get that capital, this is the same GNPC who at the moment are going for loans. Are we not aware? Yes. So an organization that is going for loans, why this socialist populist talk of GNPC should own it? That's what I'm saying. GNPC may not be able to afford the exploration. This one too, you don't understand. So moving on to that, on that tangent, we need to know what is going on now. Another issue that was raised was with regard to the stabilization fund. Initially we had a benchmark with regard to the Ghana Petroleum and Revenue Act. Didn't you talk about the stabilization?
No, he was talking about how it's managed.
Thank you. Kwame, what is wrong with you today? Did you not talk about stabilization fund from 250 million to 150 million? You mentioned the fact that we have reduced the money that we're supposed to save we have reduced it because
He
the
says,
but
no, he
still
says
not
we are
mentioned.
putting,
Mr.
we are
Adams,
putting,
And the
we are
Mr.
fund,
Adams,
wait,
wait.
oh,
He says
Mr.
we are
Adams,
putting-
no,
we
wait,
are
let
understanding.
Mr. Jantua.
what Mr. Janto was
give his
referring to was that
clarification, yes.
initially, in terms of the savings we're going to make from the petroleum fund,
No.
we said,
Mr. Okay,
Mike,
allow
Mike,
him to
come back on
clarify
route.
and then
please clarify, what
yes.
do you mean? Yes.
What
Quickly,
I
we're
said-
just under
Yes.
5
the
minutes
point
away.
I made was that
No, but we have to do something about it.
Oh,
70%
Kofi, keep quiet.
That's the
70%
reason you
of the oil
invited me.
revenue is put in the consolidated fund. And at PIA, we realized that the investments of those money have been spread
Spread
so
thinly.
thin.
So you don't see the
We
impact.
don't see
That was
yeah.
one point. What was the
That's it.
second point you made about the
benchmarking.
the benchmark being reduced
That is the
three times?
That is the benchmark revenue. It's different.
Wait, you said from how much to how much?
It was reduced from 70 to 55, and then it's because the oil price dropped, and so we had a gap of revenue that will fill that.
Thank you
it's
very
got
much.
nothing to do with
Thank
stabilization.
you
fund.
very much.
That is the
So-
different. That's a
wait,
different argument altogether.
You don't understand my point.
Are you
My
coming
point
back
is
on
that
road?
No, Mr. Adams,
Kofi,
please.
stop misbehaving. Listen to the point.
Gentlemen,
We are talking
running out
about
of time,
energy,
so.
and we are talking about the 10 oil fields discovery and the things that it can do for Ghana. Now, what I'm saying is that the stabilization fund, for example, it was set up under the Petroleum Revenue Act that it will be able to take care of Ghana in times of need. Okay,
Fuel,
thank you.
petrol.
Yes. So now the benchmark was 250 million. Now it was reduced to 150 million.
No.
Oh, wait,
They are
wait.
two separate things.
There are
Yes.
two separate
I
things.
think-
He's
right.
confusing
Wait,
it.
wait, you
Mike-
know, wait.
No,
Why?
Mike is off.
No,
Mr.
Mr. Jantua,
He's
please.
off-road.
Let me take, you know what, let me take some
hold on.
messages whilst you
Revenue
get
and
it
the
there.
stabilization
Yes.
is different.
I have to
Let me
make
take
this
some
clear.
messages whilst you look for
yeah,
the clarity.
yes.
Now we're taking this message from Aziz Donlahin, why he says it's
but-
obvious that
Why don't you- what's
NPP has no message, no good policy direction for Ghanaians. Again, another one says, Apna, the NPP man made us to understand today that it is the IMF and media that are forcing government to privatize ECG. I'd like to ask him who also forced the NPP government to privatize the Ghana Airways by giving it to Kufuor boys to manage, and I pray for God to save Ghana from politicians. This one says, Abna, I promise you that it will come to a time we will sell our air, the air that we breathe. The government could give it to some independent body to manage the ECG. Giving it to some people wouldn't be prudent. It seems today Mr. Adams is less political towards the issues, but being economical with the truth. That's what is coming in here. Well, yes. So we have just about 3 minutes. Mr. Okwe, have you found what you're looking for? Because we don't need to confuse the situations. Mr.
let me just-
Jantua did not talk about the stabilization fund per se.
That's what
Yes.
yes, but
But
I
we
was
need
talking
to-
about.
Let me.
Yes.
No.
Mr. Adams, you're still
I-
looking for it. I'll give you
listen,
that benefit.
I'm here now, please.
We
Now,
pull through.
now,
Just a minute.
please.
And then we wrap up on
when
that.
you are doing these things. Now, IFS, okay, is saying that they are worried about the depletion of the stabilization fund. Okay. Now, what are they saying? They say here that the fund was established to provide budgetary support.
It is not the same. as
Wait,
I know, we don't need to be hassling over this, Mr. Okwe.
It's my turn. Let me use the
But
time.
you
I
have
want.
just a
But they
minute
must
to wrap
behave.
up,
Yes.
please. You have 30 seconds. The time is up, really.
you.
Our time is
support
up.
petroleum
It's
revenue.
9:58.
However, it is warned that
Abner,
the
he's
reduction.
taking that
Oh,
area.
stop it,
That
madam.
has
Control.
No,
is
but
alcohol.
Mr. Okwe, we need
It
to
is
wrap up.
warned. Yes, it's my turn to talk. So let me use
30
my
seconds,
time.
finish it.
1
30
minute and 30
seconds, go
seconds.
on.
Let me go on. However, it has warned that the Institute of Fiscal Studies has warned that the reduction of the amount from 250 million to 150 million. I'm coming.
Mr. No, I think we
But
need
that's
to
what I'm
move
talking
on
about.
now. Mr.
Thank you.
Okwe,
So, madam, I need to land on my
Abner,
point.
we-
What I am saying is that
We
this
pull through
fund was set
our-
up. Oh, come on, you must stop
our
this
campaign.
behavior.
No,
What
Mr.
he's
Okwe,
saying
please.
is that,
We-
and what we should know in Ghana, I'm very surprised that
No,
they are saying
please focus on the
stabilization.
issue. We are out of time.
Stabilization fund is to do with oil money, and we are saying that the reduction of stabilization money from 250 to 150 to 100 doesn't give us any stability. That is what I'm talking about.
Very
They don't
well.
seem to understand the
That's
issue.
fine. Okay.
that we are
pull
talking
through.
about,
Thank you
and
very-
they keep interrupting and
We
not
pull-
understanding.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, so
we
we
pull
need to
through
go.
our
We're out of
campaign.
time.
We pull through our campaign launch.
Mr. Okoye, you're done with your points. We need to
Abena,
wrap up on this,
we
unfortunately.
pull through
we're
our
done.
campaign launch. They are worried about somebody saying that it is not about height.
Time is up
No,
anyway.
they are
so-
worried about somebody
but
saying
thank
that it's
you
not about height.
to
Then
viewers
they
for
campaign
taking
on the
your day with
testing
us.
giant.
We've
They
had
think
Mr.
that
Michael
Ghanaians will reject
Quay,
a short
Mr.
cut.
Kwame Jantua, and Mr.
They are
Kofi
worried
Adams.
about
We'll see
rejection
you
of
same
a
time,
short
same
cut.
place next week. Do have yourselves a good weekend and a productive week. Bye-bye.